Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures, and today we are diving deep into the Dhrupad Annual from 1989.
A fascinating document.
Oh yeah, like a time capsule packed with all these amazing stories and insights into the world of Dhrupad.
You said a real snapshot of the Dhrupad world.
Exactly, and it was published by
The Maharaja Benaras Vidya Mandir Trust.
Yes, and with editors like Professor Prem Lata Sharma involved, it shows you how much passion there is for this musical tradition.
Absolutely. And the diversity of perspectives is just remarkable. Like the article about Dhrupad in Pakistan, the Talwandi Gharana.
The Dhrupad in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Now that's intriguing, a Muslim family practicing Dhrupad.
Yeah.
It makes you rethink some assumptions, doesn't it?
It does. The article highlights Ustad Hafiz Khan Talwandiwal,
Okay.
a descendant of Dhrupad singers.
Wow.
And his perspective is what's fascinating. He connects Dhrupad to praising God, to Zikri Ilahi.
Zikri Ilahi.
Yes.
Good.
And even incorporates Islamic mystical stages into his musical training.
So it's not just about the music itself, but the spiritual connection that runs through it.
Exactly. And it gets even more intriguing when you learn about Ustad Hafiz Khan's beliefs about the magical and medicinal properties of ragas.
Oh, tell me more about that.
He believed that certain ragas could cure ailments like Raga Pilu for melancholia
Really?
and Raga Darbari for insomnia.
That's fascinating, the idea that music can have such a profound impact on well-being.
It really makes you think.
It does. And speaking of fascinating, let's move from Pakistan to the Shri Nathji temple in Nathdwara.
Yes, the article on the hereditary drummers of Shri Nathji Temple gives us a look into the lives of the pakhavaj players.
The percussionists.
Yeah, essential to Dhrupad.
And often overlooked. But they're the rhythmic foundation.
Absolutely. The article tells the story of Guru Purushottam Dasji,
Okay.
renowned pakhavaj player and author of Samvaad.
Samvaad.
His family's history is incredible. Their musical lineage goes back to the 17th century.
Wow, generations of dedication.
And their history wasn't limited to temples. They transitioned between courts and temples, showing the close relationship between religious and courtly music.
So these musicians were adaptable, moving between different settings and patrons.
They had to be, and there's this amazing story about Guru Purushottam Dasji. As a young boy, he had to practice on a box to avoid disturbing his neighbors.
Practicing on a box now, that's dedication.
It shaped his unique playing style.
Limitations can lead to innovation.
Indeed. But the article also shows the challenges Guru Purushottam Dasji faced. The musical gatherings he participated in were very competitive.
Oh.
There's even an anecdote where he was so disheartened after one experience that he contemplated suicide.
It's a reminder that even the most accomplished artists are human and face real struggles.
Exactly. It humanizes them.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the legendary Dagar family.
Oh yes, the article on the Dagar tradition, voice and tone.
It focuses on their incredible vocal training methods.
They're practically synonymous with Dhrupad.
Absolutely. And the article gives us a glimpse into their vocal mastery. One key aspect is their use of 4 body centers for voice production.
4 body centers.
Yes. The navel, the heart, the larynx, and the head.
I'm curious to know more. How does that work?
Each center contributes to different tonal qualities and embellishments. It's a full body experience.
Wow, a holistic approach.
Exactly. And they have this unique technique using the syllable num sung like a conch shell at the upper say to create a feeling of nada bindu, the point of sonic creation.
That's incredible, the way they use sound to evoke such imagery.
It speaks to the depth of their technique.
So we've explored 3 fascinating articles, each giving us a different perspective on the world of Dhrupad. What else is in store for us in this 1989 Dhrupad Annual?
Well, there's a section called Dhrupad News, offering glimpses into the festivals and events happening at that time, like a bulletin board from the past.
I love that, a peek into the Dhrupad scene back then. What stood out to you?
The growing popularity of Dhrupad festivals across India caught my eye.
Really a resurgence of interest in the late 80s.
It's fascinating, and it raises a question. What was driving this resurgence? Was it a longing for pure musical styles, a reaction against the popularity of other genres, or a desire for a deeper connection to heritage?
That's a great question. It makes you think about the cultural shifts and evolving tastes happening at that time.
It does, and it makes you wonder if there are parallels to today's revival of interest in vinyl records and vintage fashion.
I see what you mean, a yearning for something authentic.
Exactly.
We'll have to save that discussion for another time. We've reached the end of part 1 of our deep dive into the Dhrupad Annual of 1989.
We've only just scratched the surface. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll go even deeper into the world of Dhrupad in 1989. Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures. We left off pondering the resurgence of Dhrupad festivals in the late 1980s. Something that really makes you think.
It does. What was it about Drupad that was drawing people in? Was it just the music or something more? We were talking about the idea of longing for authenticity, a connection to something deeper.
Yes, and I think this Dhrupad Annual gives us some clues. Remember Ustad Hafiz Khan Talwandi and what he said about the spiritual aspect of Drupad, the idea of zikr-ilahi?
Yes, praising God through music.
Yeah.
It suggests that Drupad might have been more than entertainment for some. It was a way to express their spirituality.
Exactly. And the Dhrupad Annual mentions that some of these festivals were organized by volunteer organizations, not just government-sponsored events.
So a grassroots movement, a genuine enthusiasm for Drupad within communities, the power of music to unite people.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a bit and look at a specific event mentioned in the Dhrupad news, the Dhrupad Mela held in Varanasi in February of 1988.
Varanasi, the city of music and spirituality. The perfect setting for a Dhrupad festival.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? And this particular Mela had to be postponed because of heavy rains, all that anticipation, and then a weather delay.
Oh, wow.
It must have been quite a challenge for the organizers.
A logistical nightmare, I imagine.
It would have tested their dedication. But the Mela did eventually happen, featuring performances by some of the biggest names in Dhrupad, the Dagar brothers, Ustad Sayyiduddin Dagar.
To witness those legends in their prime, it makes you wish for a time machine.
It does. Earlier we talked about the spiritual side of Dhrupad, but this annual also touches upon the relationship between Dhrupad and royalty.
You're referring to the articles about Ustad Hafiz Khan Talwandi's family and Guru Purushottam Das Ji's family, right? Both lineages had connections to royal courts.
Exactly. For centuries, royal courts were patrons of Dhrupad singers and musicians. Their support was crucial for the development and preservation of the art form.
Dhrupad thrived under royal patronage. But as we know, times change, and so do systems of support.
That's true. The article about Guru Purushottam Das Ji mentions the difficulties his family faced when patronage started to decline.
As political and social structures shifted, musicians had to find new ways to sustain their art. A tough transition, I'm sure.
Definitely. And it's a theme that resonates even today. Musicians are always adapting to a changing world, finding that balance between tradition and innovation, connecting with new audiences.
It shows that even an ancient art form like Dhrupad is dynamic, always evolving and responding to the times.
Now let's look at the discography section of the Dhrupad Annual. It gives us a glimpse into how people were experiencing Dhrupad back then, a list of available recordings.
What were they listening to back then? Were there vinyl records?
Well, there were cassette tapes featuring artists like the Dagar brothers, and there was even a compact disc released by the Dagar brothers in Tokyo.
A CD in 1989. That was cutting-edge technology.
It was. It shows that Dhrupad was reaching a wider audience internationally. Technology played a role in spreading the music, just like streaming services do today.
Music and technology always intertwined.
And speaking of resources, the Dhrupad Annual also includes a bibliography, a list of books and articles about Dhrupad. It was put together by a scholar named Françoise Delvoye, who went by the pen name Nalini.
That's a great resource for anyone interested in learning more about Dhrupad. It shows that there's a whole world of knowledge beyond just the music itself, the history, the theory, the cultural significance.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, I want to mention the obituary section, a reminder of those we've lost.
It's a poignant reminder that these traditions are carried by individuals, and when they're gone, a part of that tradition goes with them.
There's an obituary for Ustad Nasir Faizuddin Dagar, the younger of the Dagar brothers, who passed away from cardiac arrest earlier that year.
A huge loss for the Dhrupad world.
It was. It underscores the importance of preserving these traditions, passing them on to future generations. And speaking of passing on traditions, the Dhrupad Annual includes an article about the Vidya Gharana, another prominent Dhrupad lineage.
The Vidya Gharana, known for their lineage going back to the legendary Tansen.
That's right. The article highlights figures like Pandit Shivdayal Sharma and his sons Anand Kishore and Naval Kishore. They were prolific composers, creating hundreds of Dhrupad compositions.
Incredible. The dedication and creativity to produce such a vast body of work.
It speaks to their passion for Dhrupad, their desire to enrich its repertoire. And their style was influenced by earlier masters like Tansen and Nayak Bakshu.
Connections across generations. A musical conversation that spans centuries.
Exactly. It highlights how interconnected musical traditions are, how they evolve through transmission and innovation. Dhrupad, a constantly evolving art form.
We've covered a lot in this part. From the revival of Dhrupad festivals to the role of patronage, the passing of traditions, the Vidya Gharana, and the impact of technology on Dhrupad music. It's been a fascinating look at Dhrupad in 1989.
It has, and there's still more to uncover.
Welcome back to the Samvaad Podcast Series, Decoding the Scriptures. We've been on quite a journey with this Dhrupad Annual from 1989.
It has been a fascinating exploration, hasn't it? From the spiritual depth of Ustad Hafiz Khan Talwandi Gharana's music to the challenges faced by Guru Purushottam Dasji, the intricacies of the Dagar vocal techniques, and the revival of Dhrupad festivals, we've covered so much ground.
And in the last part, we were discussing the Talwandi Gharana and their remarkable legacy of compositions. It truly highlights the depth and richness of this art form. But there's one aspect we haven't delved into yet, the pakhavaj.
You're right. And this Dhrupad Annual has a captivating article about the legendary Pandit Makan Lalji Pakhavaji.
Ah, yes, a maestro of rhythm. What does the article tell us about this pakhavaj virtuoso?
Well, it doesn't go into great detail about his personal life, but it highlights his deep understanding of the pakhavaj and all its nuances. He was apparently well-versed in both the major gharanas of pakhavaj, playing the ones associated with Kodo Singh and Nanapants.
So he mastered multiple styles, a true scholar of the instrument. Incredible.
And what's even more remarkable is that he was a gifted singer as well. The article mentions that he used to sing Dhrupad while teaching his students pakhavaj accompaniment.
Wow, what a beautiful image. It suggests that he wasn't just teaching technique, but imparting a holistic understanding of Dhrupad, the interplay of voice and rhythm, melody, and percussion.
Exactly. He saw the pakhavaj as more than just a timekeeping instrument. It was about creating a dialogue with the singer, enhancing the emotional and spiritual depth of the music.
It's a recurring theme we've seen throughout this Dhrupad Annual, isn't it?
Yeah.
This deep respect for the tradition, the dedication to excellence, and the understanding that Dhrupad is more than just music. It's a way of life.
You're absolutely right. Whether it's Ustad Hafiz Khan Talwandi while blending spiritual traditions, Guru Purushottam Dasji's commitment to his craft, the Dagar's meticulous vocal techniques, or Pandit Makan Lalji Pakhavaji's holistic approach to teaching, there's a common thread, a profound reverence for Dhrupad, and a desire to keep this tradition alive and thriving.
It reminds us that these traditions are not frozen in time. They evolve, adapt to new contexts, and find new ways to connect with audiences.
Absolutely. And it brings us back to our earlier question, what fueled the resurgence of Dhrupad festivals in the late 1980s?
Well, we may not have a definitive answer, but this Dhrupad Annual has given us valuable clues. It's shown us the multifaceted appeal of Dhrupad, its spiritual depth, its ties to history and tradition, its capacity for innovation, and its power to build community.
Perhaps in a world that was becoming increasingly fast-paced and technology-driven, people were searching for something deeper, something grounding, something that connected them to their cultural roots.
It's a beautiful thought. And it brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Dhrupad Annual of 1989. But this is just the start of your exploration, dear listener.
We encourage you to listen to the music of the artists we've discussed, explore the scholarship, and perhaps even experience a live Dhrupad performance. Let this be the beginning of your own journey into the captivating world of Dhrupad.
And until next time, keep exploring the rich tapestry of the Samvaad Podcast Series.